Picture a world where Yahweh is a nobody. He doesn't even exist in ancient Israel. Not yet. Yes, that's right. Yahweh and El are not the same gods. They are two different deities with two completely different stories. That is, until they merge into one god later. The gods ruling the land are El, the wise creator, his consort Asherah, and the storm-wielding Baal. So how does this upstart god Yahweh show up out of nowhere and end up on the throne? Buckle up, because this mystery runs deep. First, we glide past the Dead Sea into the rugged hills of Judea. Yahweh has some roots here, but guess what? He's not the only god in town. There's another deity hiding in the background, one with a shocking connection to Yahweh that could flip everything you thought you knew. From there, we travel to Edom, the realm of Kos. Some scholars whisper that Kos and Yahweh might just be one and the same. And in the copper smelting region of Timnah, under the blazing sun, Yahweh could have emerged like a god forged in fire, flames, molten metal, and all the drama of a divine blacksmith. But this fiery birth is just the start. We head east to Midian, where Moses fled after his big Exodus fiasco, marrying into a family of Yahweh worshippers. The Midianites hold a key piece of Yahweh's story, one that's going to make you rethink everything about this god's past. We trek across the Sinai to Kuntilat Adrud, where an ancient inscription stuns us: Yahweh and his Asherah. Yes, Yahweh might have had a goddess by his side, something they didn't teach you in Sunday school. Now we drift down the Nile in Egypt to a hidden treasure, the oldest known inscription of Yahweh, etched into an Egyptian temple. But he's not the God of Israel here. He's Yahweh in the land of Shasu, a god of nomadic tribes spread across the deserts of Edom, Midian, and beyond. A wandering deity with an untold origin story. And then we set sail across the Mediterranean to the Aegean, where the Minoan and Mycenaean peoples thrived on the island of Crete. Some scholars think Yahweh may have made it all the way here, taking on a whole new identity, one that's going to blow the lid off everything you thought you knew about this god. So who is Yahweh really? A god of fire? A wanderer? A mysterious figure hiding in plain sight? We'll unravel the secrets of this ancient god, his surprising rise to power, the other gods he might be connected to, and how he became the deity of Israel, and later, the world. This is a journey through myths, mysteries, and revelations you will never forget. Don't miss it. Before we continue, I put a ton of work into editing my videos and doing this full time, as you can see with this documentary. If you're a content creator or wanting to become one, you can revolutionize your video editing experience big time. What I mean is that your next video could bring in some real income. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are turning creative content into cash. Want to know how these creators are creating viral content and monetizing it to earn money? Introducing Wondershare Filmora 14. It's never been simpler to turn your vision into stunning videos in just a few clicks. This powerful video editor is built specifically for creators like us. From AI-enhanced editing tools like the Smart Short Clips to advanced features such as planar tracking and multi-camera editing, Filmora 14 empowers creators of all skill levels to produce professional-grade videos effortlessly. AI tools do the heavy lifting, so you can focus on what matters: making content that connects, engages, and goes viral. Creating viral content is just the beginning. Filmora 14 helps you grow your following and turn those views into real revenue. With tools to help you perfect every frame, your audience will come back for more, driving up engagement and boosting your income. Ready to bring your ideas to life? Join millions of creators worldwide who trust Filmora to make video editing easy, fast, and fun. Download Wondershare Filmora 14 now, and let's turn your creativity into cash. Get started with Filmora today and start creating your content that pays. Where will your creativity take you? Yahweh, a God whose origins are shrouded in mystery. He seems to appear out of nowhere, and within a millennium, he becomes the God of the Jews, Christians, and eventually Muslims. But how did this happen? Who exactly is Yahweh? The Israelites were once a Canaanite people, and their pantheon was led by El, the chief deity, with Asherah as the queen of heaven, his wife or consort. The history of El can be traced back through the Amorites, and even further into Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where writing first emerged. In this ancient world, El was the head of the Canaanite pantheon, a wise and benevolent creator god, and the father of many gods, including Baal. But where is Yahweh's history, since he never appears in the Canaanite lists? Where was his father, wife, or children before the merging of him into the Israelite pantheon? Does his story go back into the ancient past like El's? If so, where can we find it? Before the Canaanites, the Amorites, a Semitic people who occupied large parts of Mesopotamia, including the regions that would later become Canaan, worshipped El. The Amorites are credited with spreading the worship of El westward into Canaanite regions. The Hittites, another significant power in the ancient Near East, were influenced by neighboring cultures, including the Amorites. While the direct worship of El among the Hittites is less clear, they adopted and adapted many gods from the surrounding cultures. The influence of El stretches even further back into Mesopotamia. In Babylon, the deity Il, or Ilu, was worshipped, a name that appears to be linguistically related to El. However, in Mesopotamia, the supreme deity was often Marduk in later periods, or Anu in earlier times. Other deities like Enki, also known as Ea, play a role in the myth of Adapa, the ancient precursor of Enoch. The story of Enki tricking Adapa into not eating and drinking the food of immortality offered by Anu has echoes in the Adam and Eve story with Yahweh Elohim. A similar overlap is noticed between the vengeful god Enlil taking revenge on humans with a cataclysmic flood, and Yahweh, though Yahweh is portrayed in a better light than the much earlier story. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations in the region, had a pantheon headed by Anu, the sky god. Anu's characteristics as a chief deity and father figure have similarities with El, suggesting a potential influence or shared origin. El's history is long and storied, with a son named Baal, but Yahweh is conspicuously absent from these earlier Canaanite or Amorite pantheons. The mystery deepens. Where did Yahweh come from? Have we been looking in all the wrong places for this mystical deity? Two Egyptian texts, however, mention
Yahweh in the land of the Shasu,
meaning nomads, in list of place names around Edom. These texts date to the reigns of Amenophis III, 14th century BCE, and Ramses II, 13th century BCE. It is generally thought that Yahweh must have originally been associated with a mountain of the same name in or near Edom.
These Egyptians inscribed this name of the deity of the Shasu in hieroglyphics on their temple, as it's translated into YHW, which properly pronouncing his name as Yah-O or Ye-O, which is literally the god the Israelites worshipped, later being pronounced as Yahweh. Other variations of the name as Yah-O continued to be used down into the Hellenistic period. Keep this in mind as we get later into this video. It might shock you what you find out.
It's a reconstruction of the Shasu of Yahweh inscription. That's the oldest known mention of Yahweh ever discovered thus far. Later, the Kuntilat Adrud inscriptions dating around 800 to 750 BCE contain several references to Yahweh, including
Yahweh of Samaria and Yahweh of Teman.
These inscriptions indicate that Yahweh was worshipped in different regions, including Israel, known as Samaria, and Edom, known as Teman. They also include blessings in the name of Yahweh and Asherah, suggesting that Yahweh may have had a consort or was associated with the goddess Asherah. You can see on the map where Kuntilat Adrud would be located in the Sinai Peninsula, which just so happens to be the area supposedly the Israelites journeyed, escaping Egypt during the Exodus. The earliest epigraphic evidence from the land of Palestine that refers to Yahweh is the Mesha Stele from around 840 BCE. In it, King Mesha of Moab boasts of a campaign in which he devoted the vessels of Yahweh to Chemosh after conquering the city of Nebo from Israel. The cults dedicated to Yahweh and El originated independently of each other before their eventual merger process, still not completed when much of the Old Testament was written. But determining how Yahweh came to be the patron deity of Israel and Judah is not so simple. This is strange because the lack of archaeological evidence has required Bible scholars to rely mostly on the text of the Bible itself. However, by relying on experts in ancient religious metallurgical connections to Yahweh, a deity burning as brightly as the Aten, the notorious god promoted by the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, and riddled with mystery much like Dionysus, we may discover that Yahweh has even deeper roots stretching further than most scholars have suggested. You could see where the Arid Kenites were located on this map, as well as check out this Arabian map from the 1478, and the tribe in the upper left corner is the one listed that matches the Kenites. The Kenite hypothesis, first proposed by theologian F.W. Galani in 1862, suggests that Yahweh was originally the god of the Kenite tribe before the Israelites settled in Canaan. While this theory initially gained some traction, it lost momentum as modern biblical studies shifted focus to the broader Canaanite context in which Yahweh later emerged. Scholars began to emphasize the influence of Canaanite religion and deities on Israelite beliefs, leading to alternative theories that minimized the specific role of the Kenites. However, the Kenite hypothesis is experiencing a resurgence thanks to new findings and a reassessment of biblical text. This renewed interest is prompting scholars to take a fresh look at the potential significance of the Kenites in the early worship of Yahweh. This video may solve the riddle with the help of the brilliant work of Paul Davidson, creator of the YouTube channel Inquisitive Bible Reader, and the amazing Professor Nissim Amzalag. So be sure to check out their links in the description. Also, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss out on another masterpiece. Comment on your favorite parts and stir up some conversation.
And God said to Moses, I am Yahweh, the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not reveal my name, Yahweh, to them.
But I did not reveal my name, Yahweh, to them.
Exodus 6, 2-3.
This section and many others will be based on the wonderful work of Nissim Amzalag. In his article, A Metallurgical Perspective on the Birth of Ancient Israel, 2021, Dr. Nissim Amzalag says, 50 years ago, Mircea Eliade made a bold assertion. The discovery and mastery of metals didn't just revolutionize how humans interacted with the material world, it transformed their very understanding of the universe. Metallurgy, he argued, opened up a whole new mythological and religious landscape. Today, anthropologists back up this claim, showing that metallurgy wasn't just a craft, but a sacred practice in many traditional societies across Africa and India. The ancient Near East tells a similar story, especially during the Bronze Age. Here, gods like Ptah, as well as Khnum in Egypt and Volcanos in Crete, weren't just blacksmiths, they were creators, vital forces of life itself. Even in Mesopotamia, Enki, the god of smiths, was revered as a wise creator and protector of humanity. Pause. We need to set Dr. Amzalag's work aside for a moment, and we will return. Let's take a detour into ancient gods and the well with which many of these deities spring forth with these attributes. One should not be surprised to see that gods and humans have mingled long before written history. But even in written history, we find interesting pieces to the puzzle of how these deities and cultures overlap. Let us don the cap of Sir James George Fraser for a moment and look at potential connections and similarities between deities which could potentially help us see Yahweh in a new light. Suggesting that Yahweh is a metallurgy deity, we should look to other gods in the known pantheons around the known world and see if we can connect some possible dots. Being Midian is in West Asia, which is geographically close to Egypt, and is a place where Moses escapes Egypt to flee after murdering an Egyptian, as well as finds out the name of this god Yahweh, which was never known by that name to his fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So let's start here with a few Egyptian gods. Ptah. In Egyptian mythology, Ptah was a creator god and the patron of craftsmen, including metalworkers and architects. He was believed to have created the world by thought, which is your heart, and word, which is your tongue, embodying the importance of creation and craft. Very, very similar to the Genesis creation story. In Memphis, where Ptah was the chief deity, craftsmen, especially those working with metal, were held in high regard, reflecting the god's importance. Check out the statue of Ptah displayed at the Egyptian Museum of Turin, Italy. It dates between 1390 and 1353 BC. Ptah, revered as the god of craftsmanship and metallurgy, was considered the patron of artisans and creators. His role in Egyptian mythology encompassed the shaping and crafting of both the physical world and the spiritual essence of life, making him a central figure in the ancient Egyptian understanding of creation and skilled labor. Khnum. While primarily known as the god who fashioned humans' bodies from clay on his potter's wheel, including the one who gives breath to those in the egg, Khnum was also associated with the creation of materials, including metals. In some traditions, Khnum's role extended to overseeing the skills of craftsmen, further elevating the status of those who worked with metal. The high status of metalworkers in ancient Egypt reflects the profound respect for their role in shaping not only the physical, but also the spiritual world, as their work was considered a direct continuation of the god's creative acts. In this depiction from the Dendera temple, Khnum, as seen on the left, he's shown fashioning the god Ihi on a potter's wheel, similar to how Yahweh is told to be using a potter's wheel, with the assistance of the frog-headed goddess Higket. Khnum, the god of creation and craftsmanship, is believed to mold life itself, while Higket, associated with fertility and childbirth, symbolizes the bread of life. Together, they represent the divine process of creation, with Ihi, the youthful god of music and joy, emerging as a result of their sacred work. Here's another depiction of the ancient god Khnum on the right, alongside the lioness goddess Minhit on the left. Adorns the outer wall of the temple of Esna. Khnum, the ram-headed god of creation, water and metallurgy, was believed to fashion humans on his potter's wheel and oversees the crafting of metals, further emphasizing his role in shaping both life and civilization. Menhit, often associated with war and protection, complements him as a fierce and powerful deity, seen like Asherah as well. The scene symbolizes the balance between creation, craftsmanship, and divine strength in Egyptian religious art. Enki, Ea. In Mesopotamian mythology, Enki, known as Ea in Akkadian, was a god of wisdom, water, creation, and craft, including the arts of metalworking. While not exclusively a smithing god, Enki was associated with the skills and knowledge necessary for creating civilization, including metallurgy. I mean, this god is said to have crafted the world in their mythology. Also, the city of Eridu, sacred to Enki, was one of the earliest centers of urban culture, where such crafts were highly valued. Many scholars have long recognized comparisons between Enki and Yahweh, like the act of warning their respective flood heroes Noah and Utnapishtim of the coming judgment. Both of these deities have also been seen as a Prometheus-like character, trickster gods, with Enki sneaking around the pantheon to warn humans, or even tricking Adapa about the food and water of life, while Yahweh seems to have tricked the humans into thinking they would die the same day they ate the fruit from the forbidden tree. Kula. A lesser-known god, Kula, was the Sumerian god of bricks and construction, sometimes also associated with the crafts required for building, including metalworking. Although not as prominent as Enki, Kula's role emphasizes the divine importance of those who create the physical world, including smiths. Volcanos is an ancient Minoan god closely connected to vegetation and was widely worshipped in Crete. As one of the major deities in the Minoan pantheon, he was often associated with a mother goddess who was both his mother and consort. Together they were believed to engage in sacred marriage, or herosgamos, symbolizing the unity of life-giving forces. Check out this depiction of the Minoan Zeus Volcanos facing a bull. It highlights the deep connections between divinity and nature in Minoan religion. Also, we're looking at a late Minoan period depiction of cult processions showing Minoans carrying offerings, with the prominent figure of the cupbearer leading the way. These processions, central to Minoan religious practices, highlight the importance of ritual offerings to the gods, symbolizing devotion and the role of ceremonial leaders within the community. This collection of sacral terracottas from Gazi near Heraklion, dating to 1300 around to 1100 BCE, features goddesses with upraised arms. These figurines likely represent a form of religious worship, symbolizing the divine power and protection. Their posture reflects the Minoan and Mycenaean traditions of honoring deities, offering a glimpse into the spiritual practices of ancient Crete. Look at this bronze shield from Crete, geometric period, 8th to 7th century BCE. Looks almost like a Gilgamesh-type figure on the actual shield. Very, very interesting. Here's a Minoan copper ingot from Zakros, Crete. It highlights the extensive mining, since we're dealing with metallurgy, and the trade networks of the ancient world, showcasing the far-reaching influence of resource extraction during this era. Such artifacts underscore the importance of metallurgy in ancient societies, a practice that holds significant relevance in understanding the origins of Yahweh. The worship of Volcanos may have been influenced by the Mesopotamian god Dumuzid, also known as Tammuz according to scholars, reflecting cultural exchanges in the ancient world. As Mycenaean Greece rose in power and came into contact with the Minoans, the cult of Volcanos synchronized into the development of Zeus's worship. In fact, Zeus was sometimes known as Zeus Volcanos, indicating a blending of religious traditions. Additionally, many scholars suggest that Volcanos may have influenced the Roman god Vulcan, given the similarities in their names and aspects of their worship. Crete is home to one of humanity's most ancient civilizations. the human presence on Crete may indeed reach as far back into the earliest epochs of history. In 2002, 6.05 million-year-old human-like footprints were discovered on the island. Now, debate rages as to their significance. However, the discovery of 130,000-year-old stone tools have incontrovertibly confirmed a Paleolithic human presence on Crete. Based upon this discovery, the historic timeline for seafaring has now been pushed back by thousands of years. Suffice it to say, there truly can be no doubt regarding the extreme antiquity of Cretan civilization. You can see the footprints that are literally stuck in the stone that we can look at today. Beautiful images. Moving forward into recorded history, civilization blossomed in Crete long before the Greek Mycenaean era. The religion of ancient Crete served as a template for the Greeks of the classical age. Its religious and mystical sites were places of pilgrimage, for it was the birthplace of Zeus himself. Thus, rather than just another civilization, Crete was both the economic and religious epicenter of ancient Mediterranean high civilization. Pointing again at the ancient and globally prevalent presence of Sanskrit, scholars have recognized a clear relationship between ancient Minoan Linear A and Sanskrit. A brief review of this evidence provides some startling insights into the nature of ancient Minoan and Mycenaean religion and belief. Look at these Minoan inscriptions written in the mysterious Linear A. They date back to 1850 to 1450 BC and were discovered in Phaistos, Crete, now housed in the Archaeological Museum of Heraklion. They offer a tantalizing glimpse into the language and culture of the ancient Minoan civilization, whose script remains largely undeciphered to this day. Over 100 years ago, Jane Harrison, one of the world's leading experts on Greek religion, wrote of an ancient hymn to Koros called the Hymn of Koretes. It is in praise of Megistos Koros, the greatest and youthful at the head of the gods. Look at the hymn of Zeus Koretes limestone that is written in stone. In this image, you can see the whole stone slab with the different fragmented sections. In this image, though, it's zoomed in, showing you the writing up close. Dr. Jane Ellen Harrison is a brilliant classical scholar. She revolutionized the study of ancient Greek religion and mythology. As a key figure in the Cambridge Ritualists, her work on ritual and Greek practices reshaped classical studies and continues to influence modern scholarship. Found in an ancient temple on the island of Crete, it is one of history's most important discoveries, that stone slab that we just showed you, in understanding of ancient religion. Addressed to Zeus in his youthful form as Koros Velkanos, this hymn was inscribed on both sides of that limestone slab, 4 fragments of which were recovered from votive pits near Roussalakos at Pelakastro, Crete in 1904. This discovery confirmed that Pelakastro was the site of the ancient Dictaeon, the sanctuary famed in antiquity for the worship of Zeus. Jane Harrison, Themis, a study of the social origins of Greek religion. Take a look at this paper where it's actually trying to translate that script. This book reveals that the worship of baby Zeus as Koros is at the very origins of ancient Minoan and Greek religion. Zeus is identified as Koros, the youthful and the greatest. He is identified as the divine boy who was hidden away at birth and given to another to be as his mother. Arthur Evans, the famous discoverer of a Minoan civilization, classified him as a divine child or a youth. Here's a series of 2,500-year-old presos, Cretan coins, depicting this same baby Zeus being nursed by a cow. You could see it on the left, the right, and the center next to this bird image. Looks like an owl. In fact, this was one of the most popular coins of the region. Young Zeus is presented in ancient Minoan art as a long-haired youth, and hymned to as Homegas Koros, or the Great Youth. He is surrounded by Korites, young men initiates of the Koros tradition. They were a band of ecstatic armed dancers, protecting the infant Zeus. This same element is present in the Indic Vaishnava tradition as well. Thus, the cowherd men, led by child Krishna's adopted father, Nanda Maharaj, protected the youth as he was suckled by cows. Coincidence?
Koros most great, I glorify you, Cronion, Lord of all that is moist and gleaming. You stand at the head of all gods. Rejoice in our dance and our song, with lyre and flutes as we sing around your altar. Hymn to Koros, the divine youth of Crete.
Young Zeus, known as Koros, was also named Velkanos. Here, the W in the name is pronounced as a V, and the ch is pronounced as k. So Welchanos should be Valkanos, and has thus been confused with the demigod Vulcanus, which probably merged at some point together. Some scholars doubt that Velkanos, or Welkanos, Velkanos, Chorus, and Zeus are one. Yet the only proof they give is that his name is found along with the name of Zeus within the same prayer. Thus they say he must be a totally different god. However, if we applied this to any Vedic mantra, we can easily see the inaccuracies of this conclusion. It's an example of scholars with no background in devotional practice of any of the living sacred traditions. They reach a mundane conclusion. Using logic, the entire Hari Haraya Nama Krishna hymn would be about 100 different gods competing for worship and prayers. Check out the beautiful art of Krishna. Here is a drawing of ivory boys from Palicastro around 1600 to 1500 BC. This drawing is from Evans at the Palace of Minos, Volume 3, 1930. Then there's the actual child, the artifact that you can see. That's baby Zeus, Koros. And then you'll notice that there's the baby divine boy, Braj Bal Kanya, Krishna, the young divine boy of Krishna. As Welchanos, pronounced Velkanos, is potentially a dialectical version of the Sanskrit Balakana, Velkanos is actually a later Greek pronunciation of the original Minoan. Beyond the name, the commonalities become obvious when comparing the attributes, characteristics, and legends of Velkanos Koros, the divine boy of ancient Crete, and Balkanya Krishna, the divine boy of Brahadam, Vrindavan. Koros is always represented as a youthful, beardless god, often in gesture of worship or adoration to a female goddess. This silver stater from ancient Crete, dating around 330 to 320 BC, depicts Velkanos seated within a tree, In his right hand, he holds a rooster perched on his knee, while his left hand rests on his seat, embodying the balance of nature and divinity in one striking image. Volcanos was frequently depicted on the coins of Phaistos seated among the branches of a tree. The bird's symbolism is also significant and relates to the eagle, hawk, rooster that is always associated with the divinity of Zeus, Vishnu, Helios. Like all these forms of God, Volcanos was also depicted as an eagle. Lord Krishna is seen here, sitting in a tree with a peacock and cows. Volcanos also sits in a tree with a cock, which is substituted for the tropical peacock, accompanied by cows. Here's another coin of Zeus as young Volcanos sitting in a tree. In the right hand holds a rooster, bull rushing, sometimes walking. A series of 2,500-year-old Presos Cretan coins depicts the same baby Zeus being nursed by a cow, similar to how Krishna was nursed by a cow. Just want to nail that home to seeing overlap by very distant cultures. Rather than an obscure regional cult, Volcanos worship was widespread and long-lasting. A Vulcania festival was long celebrated, and it endured through the centuries down into the Hellenistic era. Inscriptions at Gortyn and Litos record a Vulcania festival, showing that Volcanios was still widely venerated in Hellenistic Crete. In the Hellenistic period, a small sanctuary dedicated to Zeus Volcanos was founded at the Hagia Triada site of a long-ruined Minoan palace, Zeus at Mythos. One of the lateral faces of the Hagia Triada sarcophagus that was found at Crete, Greece. The Volcanos tradition of ancient Crete was at the core of classical Greek culture. This is confirmed by the ancient book Plato's Laws. The characters of the book engage in a dialogue on the origins of civilization as they proceed on their religious pilgrimage from Knossos to the Cave of Zeus. This Cave of Zeus is the sacred birthplace of Zeus as the divine child, Volcanos Chorus. The dramatic setting of Plato's Laws is along the pilgrimage route to one such site, emphasizing archaic Cretan knowledge. Sacred pilgrimage routes connected to Volcanos reflect yet another vital ingredient of the tradition. Pilgrims such as those highlighted by Plato followed specific routes directly connected to Zeus and his associated legends. These same pilgrimage routes are found in the Vedic Vaishnava tradition as well. They are called Pakrama Marga. Devotees walk along a specific sacred trail directly connected to Krishna and his associated legends. The same exact motif of a divine boy being nursed by a cow is a very ancient theme of Indian Vaishnavism and is still found in Vaishnava art of modern India. Here is a 2,200-year-old coin with Zeus and his eagle as a rose representing the goddess Rhoda, which is Greek for rose, at his feet. And then some scholars suggest the person on the right in this image of this coin is Yahweh. Some say this is Zeus. This is a 4th century BC coin, and around this period we start to see syncretism of both deities in written history happening. Notice the eagle in the deity's hand, just like Zeus in the previous images. This entire Volcanos detour, which apparently shows shared similarities to Zeus and Vishnu in several ways, makes me think of these Cretans who once had a tomb of Zeus where the supposed corpse of Zeus lay. The claim that Cretans are always liars in the New Testament Greek texts and Paul's syncretism, technically the author of Acts of the Apostles, where he quotes the Greek poets Epimenides of Crete from the 6th century BCE.
For in him we live and move and have our being.
Also Arates of Sully from the 3rd century BCE.
We are his offspring.
Brings to mind that these authors saw shared heritage deep into the past with statements about Zeus and Yahweh. Paul is quoting a pagan author, Epimenides, who was a Cretan poet. In his poem, Critica, Epimenides accuses the Cretans of being liars and evil beasts because they claim to host a tomb of Zeus, chief of the gods. Since Zeus
lives and abides forever,
the Cretans must be liars. Paul quotes from this same poem in his sermon to the Areopagus in Acts 17:28. We know he's using the Greek poet to point out that Jesus is also not dead, though he was in a tomb. Just like Zeus isn't dead even if Cretans have a tomb for him. Crete also claimed to be the birthplace of Zeus, known in antiquity as the Dictaeon Cave, which legend placed on the slopes of Mount Ida, Crete's tallest mountain. Reputedly from Gnosis, Epimenides was supposed to have the gift of prophecy, which was bestowed on him after he allegedly slept for 57 years in a cave sacred to Zeus. Crete's Mount Ida is the island's highest summit, sacred to the goddess Rhea, and wherein lies the legendary Idaean Cave, in which baby Zeus was concealed from his father Cronus. It is one of a number of caves believed to have been the birthplace or hiding place of Zeus. The Curetes, a band of mythical warriors, undertook to dance their wild, noisy war dances in front of the cave, so that the clamor would keep Cronus from hearing the infants crying. On the flank of this mountain is the Amari Valley, the site of expansion by the ancient settlement at Phaistos. Its modern name is Siloritis. The surrounding area and mountain used to be thickly wooded. Then there's the sacred Mount of Euctus. It's the final resting place of the greatest god of Greek antiquity. Whilst the claim of Crete to be the birthplace of Zeus has been widely accepted, the myth that the god also died and was buried in the island is unique to Crete. According to the legend, the shape of Mount Euctus, when viewed from the west, reveals the profile of a bearded head reclining as in sleep or in death, and represent the face of Zeus. Right here, according to the myth, in the mountain lies his tomb. I'm reminded of the wonderful work of Dr. Robert Cargill called Cities That Built the Bible, where he points out how geography impacts the myths of cultures. Take, for example, the biblical story of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. Notice this story takes place right around the Dead Sea, where pillars of salt, a natural phenomena, are visually seen by anyone traveling the area. It seems that the geography influenced the myths told with that particular culture. In this image, you see a rock that is looking like it's standing tall, which some have identified as Lot's wife. However, there were also tall salt pillars that people have identified with her as well. Following his death, god Zeus, legend states, was reborn annually in a springtime. There is evidence of a shrine on the peak of Mount Euctus that has been identified as the earliest temple of Minoan Crete. According to the excavations, the bull sacrifice was a part of the rituals enacted in the building as well as unequivocal evidence having been found for the ritual of human sacrifice. And you can see on a map where the island and Mount Euctus would be. This idea of Cretans are always liars comes from an earlier source. Athenodorus of Eretria, in the 8th book of his commentaries, says that Thetis and Medea had a dispute in Thessaly as to which was the most beautiful. Their judge was Idomeneus, who gave the victory to Thetis. Medea, in anger, said that the Cretans are always liars, and in revenge, she made the curse that he would never speak the truth, just as he had lied in his judgment. It is from that, he says, that Cretans pass as liars. Athenodorus cites, as author of this story, Antiochus in his 2nd book of Legends of the Cities. Man, that sucks to have a myth give you a permanent stain of being liars. Maybe they really were commonly told as liars, and that stain stuck to them in mythology, but if not, that really sucks. Idomeneus was a mythical warrior during the Trojan War and king of Crete. It was said by mythographer Apollodorus of Athens that after the war, Idomeneus' ship hit a terrible storm. He promised Poseidon that he would sacrifice the first living thing he saw when he returned home if Poseidon would save his ship and crew. The first living thing was his son, whom Idomeneus duly sacrificed. This sounds very similar to the story of Jephthah in the book of Judges. Just to show that Cretans have a long, deep past connecting with the region of the world near where the Kenites would have been located, here is an image of Cretans bringing gifts to Egypt in the tomb of Rekhmire under Pharaoh Thutmosis III. This was around 1479 to 1425 BC. Clearly, getting back to the book of Acts, it's obviously trying to blend philosophy with the apparent statement that Zeus isn't dead as an example of this unknown god, who is a living god. Again, echoing the Cretans are always liars mantra. However, I bet if we did a bit of digging, we would find this idea of Zeus having a tomb to stretch back into very, very ancient times, when gods were actually known to die. This is a modern idea that gods are completely immortal and cannot die. Either way, seeing Yahweh and Zeus, or even Yahweh and Dionysus, or Zeus Dionysus, was a common perception in the ancient Greek and Roman world. For crying out loud, the entire Maccabean War was over Zeus Yahweh, or non-Hellenized versions of Yahweh worship in the temple, which also included Dionysus in 3rd Maccabees, but we'll get there. How far back do these shared mythologies really go? Do they touch each other during the Bronze Age? I wouldn't be shocked if there was much more overlap between these various regions during the Bronze Age, meaning I could see us finding some connections between the gods Zeus and Yahweh, or Dionysus and Yahweh in the Bronze Age. The region of Edom, exactly 19 miles north of the Gulf of Aqaba, the area is rich in copper ore and has been mined since the 5th millennium BCE. That's 7,000 years ago. Humans have mining this area for a very long time. This area would have been part of the kingdom of Edom, where the Midianites were located. You can see the land of Edom in its proximation between Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, West Bank, and Jordan, and notice it also touches the Dead Sea. That's important as we dive forward to Yahweh's origins. There's so much more to say. Pottery by the Midianites, called kariyah, painted ware, is found at several sites stretching from the southern Levant to northwest Arabia, meaning that's where the Hijaz is located. This is where the original location of manufacture is. The pottery is biochrome, polychrome style, and it dates as early as the 13th century BC. Midianite pottery is found in its largest quantities at metallurgical sites in the southern Levant, especially Timna. You know, where the famous Timna Valley is located? Because of the Mycenaean motifs on Midianite pottery, some scholars, including George Mendenhall, Peter Parr, and Ben Rothenberg, have suggested that the Midianites were originally sea peoples who migrated from the Aegean region and imposed themselves on a pre-existing Semitic stratum. Think about that. How did Mycenaean art in the pottery make its way all the way to this place in Edom from the Aegean, if they aren't sea peoples relocating in the area? That is the Aegean Sea. Then you can also see on the east side of the Mediterranean, Israel, Jerusalem, and further down, Jordan. Right there in that area is where they relocated. The question of the origin of the Midianites still remains open, but speculate with me for a moment as we move forward into the origins of Yahweh and the birth of Israel. Suppose these Midianites were Mycenaeans who continued some form of their culture, as is noticed in their pottery, including elements of their divinities. Could we see elements of Yahweh which may overlap or be introduced to this deity through this cross-cultural integration? This god Kos may be the Edomite Yahweh, as some scholars suppose. Look at this Nabatean depiction of the goddess Atargatis, dating around 100 AD. The eagle on her head is believed to be a symbol of Kos. This was also the symbol of Zeus and other gods. Truth be told, many Minoan gods and religious conceptions were fused in the Mycenaean religion. From the existing evidence, it appears that the Mycenaean religion was the mother of the Greek religion. The Mycenaean pantheon already included many divinities that can be found in classical Greece, such as Poseidon, Demeter, Artemis, Paeon, Athena, Dionysus, Zeus, Hera, Hephaestus, Ares, Hermes, and many, many more. So take Dionysus for instance. This god goes way back into the ancient Mycenaean pantheon as a son of Zeus and as a wine god, and much, much more. We can only decipher the Linear B script, but seems to predate this language barrier. A curious question arises. What are the odds that somewhere in the distant past, such as the time when these Mycenaeans invaded the Midianite regions, where Yahweh seems to originate, brought their gods with them, including this Yahweh? Or suppose the local deity was this Yahweh deity and elements were incorporated to him when they settled in the region. What if the Near Eastern myths went west sometime way, way back and influenced the Dionysus god's myth, and this myth somehow made its way back over to the east into the Midianite region when the Sea Peoples relocated to these regions? Did Dionysus and Yahweh have independent evolutions with zero origins in relation to each other? Is it also possible that Yahweh somehow moved into the Greek pantheon as Dionysus, starting from the east and moved west? Theophoric names, which incorporate the name of a deity, were common in ancient Israel, with examples like Elijah, Isaiah, and Jonathan, reflecting devotion to Yahweh. Some scholars have explored potential connections between Yahweh and Dionysus through these names, suggesting that the idea may not be as fringe as once thought, and could have deeper historical roots. For instance, the Greek name Ionis, John, is a Hellenized form of the Hebrew name Yohanan, meaning
Yahweh has been gracious.
while some have noted the resemblance between Ionis and Greek names containing Io or Yao, a transliteration of Yahweh. There is a possibility that these ancient connections could reflect ancient syncretism rather than mere phonetic coincidence. Another intriguing figure is Iacchus, associated with Dionysus in certain mystery religions, whose name also bears similarity to Yao, which is that Yahweh name, raising the question of whether such linguistic connections might date back to a more distant past.
Remember the Egyptian Shasu inscription and how the ancient name was pronounced? Yah-O was the name, which sounds awfully similar to both the Israelite worship of Yahweh and Greek Dionysus Yah-O.
These ideas emerge from the broader context of Hellenistic religious syncretism where Greek and Jewish cultures blended, but possibly reflecting older shared traditions. For instance, the use of wine in Jewish rituals might have led to associations with Dionysus by Greek and Roman observers, like Plutarch and Tacitus, who sometimes linked Yahweh with Bacchus, Dionysus. These connections, rather than being superficial, may hint at a deeper and more ancient intertwining of religious practices and deities. Historical references to a supposed festival of Dionysus in Judea don't appear until the time of the Maccabees. The general claim in 1 Maccabees 1, 51, 54, 55 that Antiochus Epiphanes forced the Jews to sacrifice in the Greek manner is expanded in 2 Maccabees 6:7, and you can compare it to 3 Maccabees 2:29, to say that the Jews were compelled to participate in Dionysian festivals and even to adorn themselves with ivy, chisos. As a result, Hippolytus, a church father of the 2nd century, saw Antiochus Epiphanes as the prototype of the Antichrist. However, this entire narrative is widely regarded as unhistorical. Even the account in 3 Maccabees, which refers to Egyptian matters, lacks plausibility. Although Dionysus was the patron deity of the Egyptian Ptolemies, the Syrian Seleucids always worshipped Zeus. Nevertheless, Dionysian festivals were celebrated in every country under Greek influence. Antiochus XI even bore the byname Dionysus. You can see the source in Josephus' Antiquities 13:15-1. And Nicanor, a general of Demetrius, threatened to dedicate a temple in Jerusalem to Dionysus unless Judas Maccabeus was handed over to him, 2 Maccabees 14:33. Thus, the Seleucids might indeed have pressured the Jews into similar worship. It's certain that the Jews of Egypt were forced to worship Dionysus, though this persecution likely occurred within the Nomos of Arsinoe, 3 Maccabees 2:29. Furthermore, it is said in 3 Maccabees 2:30 that those who chose to join the Dionysian mysteries would receive the same civic rights as the Alexandrians. Under Ptolemy IV Philopator, citizenship for Egyptian Jews depended on their participation in Dionysian worship, which many could not accept, likely preventing them from becoming full citizens under his rule. Plutarch connects a myth of Dionysus with the Palestinian city of Scyllapolis. Pliny and Solinus assert that